That's just how I roll. My name is Carrie Smith, and I've met some of you and look forward to perhaps meeting some of the rest of you. This has been a great opportunity for me. I am right now, the title is Contract Administrator for Riverdale High School. And what that really is an interim principal until we can get one hired and in place and settled. But I really feel as though my role is to do whatever I can to be able to get the year off to a really good start and make it a smooth transition, not only to get school started, but also to when the new principal comes, so that they are going to be hitting the ground running, and I'll be able to help that transition a bit too. The reason that we have this evening or this time together to have some question and answers, it has to do about school starting, and I assume that most of them will center around protocols and COVID and some of those kinds of things. That's what I expect. I will answer every question I can to the fullest of my ability, but know that there are other staff members here on the call, and if they have something to input, I would fully expect that they know your system way better than I. And so I appreciate the fact that they've given them their time to come and join us. And I think most of you already have your microphones muted. So if you haven't, I'm not hearing any feedback. So I'm assuming that that is the case. And we will have someone who, Cheryl will watch for people who click on the bottom of your screen and there's a hand that's like this. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that's the best mechanism to do that. One other piece that I want to at least share before we get started, what I have really felt the last 2.5 weeks that I've been working is that this district has better than I think I've felt for a while. And the fact that I have worked in education for 40 years, I have been a superintendent, I have been a principal, I've worked at ESDs as well as regular school districts. I'm a teacher. I will always be a teacher at heart. So I want to be able to honor all of those audiences and a parent. So, but what I really have felt at Riverdale is a sincere desire to, at the root of everything, which sounds ridiculously cliche, but is that it is all about the children. And whether your platform sometimes is just being able to stand up for the rights of your children and understand things, teachers, administrators, everyone else really cares about the children. And so the goal is realistically to help all the children be healthy, safe, successful, and be productive, exemplary citizens. And I don't think that wavers in anyone that I've talked to. So know that I feel that from you as a district. And that's my hope in this discussion tonight, is that really is, that you see that focus. So I want to give as much time for questions as there are. Let me say there are now 31 people on this call. That's amazing. And which truly shows that all of you care about your kids and their success too. As far as COVID goes, you can ask specific questions. I may not know the answers. Maybe some of the others do, but we may not have all the answers, but we will get back to them. But I would like to ask, Sarah, would you do me a favor as we're going through this? Would you write down questions that you hear so that, even if we need to come back and answer them and respond to people as a whole, we've at least captured the question, and we may give more full answers later. And that's one thing that I want to make sure that happens. And I want you to know that for the most part, the protocols and the structure that's in place will look a lot like it did last spring. And there aren't drastic changes. We'll follow the guidance that's been laid out by the state. It is 3 feet apart, 3 feet apart outside and inside. And also the masks have to be worn inside. The other suggestion was to be able to gather the information for vaccines. And in your registration materials, you may have seen that link or that request that we ask for your vaccine information, and we ask for it if you have it. You know, obviously K-12 don't even have that opportunity to do it. Ages kindergarten through age 12, not K-12. So those older students have the opportunity to have it. And we're going to gather it in the same way, we decided, as we gather information for any vaccine. Have you done it? Yes or no? Give us the date. I mean, it feels like that's the best answer that we have. We're not asking for cards. We're just asking for people's honesty in their response. And then we will be able to sort that by putting it in a system that allows us to do so. So I have rambled more than I wanted to. I really want to hear your questions. So does anyone have a specific question? So if you unmute yourself, then just go ahead and talk.
Gail, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm sort of curious where things are. Are we waiting for an interim superintendent to be hired before a principal is hired, or are we looking to hire an interim principal? What is that looking like?
Both. So the interim principal, from the way I understand it, and if there are school board members on here, perhaps they would like to chime in, but the way I understand it, there is, and this is public information, that the board will meet with the candidates this Saturday. There will be some decisions, and there will be an announcement Tuesday or Wednesday next week is the hope, the way that will work for the interim superintendent. And it will be listed as interim. And the principal position does not close until the 28th. And so, and there's every reason to believe, may not necessarily be true, that some of those individuals that perhaps were not hired as the superintendent might be interested in the principal. And I think that's why that is done that way. I don't know. I didn't make that plan. But I think that within the next week or two after that, the principal will be hired.
Carrie,
did I answer that fully, Gail?
Okay. Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I was wondering, I know, you said that it would look kind of like the spring. I'm wondering, does that mean that the students will be in pods, or will they be in their normal classes? Will they be able to switch classes? What's the update on that?
They will be in normal classes, and the goal is to keep them 3 feet apart as appropriate. There will be times when they may not be. And that's just teenagers. It isn't because we want them to be. We have talked about, the schedules and the classes should look like regular school, except kids are going to be wearing masks and they're going to be 3 feet apart. That's the goal. And so we are going to proceed that way.
Carrie, I have a couple questions that have been typed in.
Okay.
One is asking, maybe David Thompson, would you take this one? Can you describe the 9th grade orientation day and what it will look like for them?
Yep, I was already typing it up, but I can just read it. So we're going to be, the students will have an opportunity on the orientation day to meet their teachers. They'll have an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about the program and expectations. They'll have a chance to be able to ask questions and get some answers to things that they might be feeling a little nervous about coming into high school for the first time. This year, we're also going to be including 10th graders in that day, since they didn't have full day at school last year. So we're wanting to also get them a little face time with their teachers and actually get them more aware about the program as well. There are, we often have student leaders doing that. So I'll be sending out email to all the entire community to involve some of the juniors and seniors in helping guide some of the small groups in their tours and some of the other activities that they do through the day.
Thank you. Carrie, you can take this next one. I'm going to kind of combine it. One question is, have we hired a new counselor? And also, have we hired a French teacher?
Well, I am so excited to report because it feels like it's been a long haul getting some of these things done. But yes, we have offered and accepted to both the counselor and the French teacher. So those are both in place. And we feel really good about it. We weren't in our process. A few of you may have sat in on that. We didn't settle. We wanted to hire the person that we thought really would be the best fit for Riverdale High School. So yes, they are. The French teacher is in Albania at the moment. So she will be back by the first day of school. So, but we feel good about it. So is there another question in the chat?
I've got a few more in the chat. I'm going to combine as well.
I think I see from L. Taylor, what will lunch look like? And that has been a struggle. Everybody knows that. Sorry, Cheryl. Are you there?
We're going to add that with 3 feet apart during passing times and restrooms and lunch area.
I will do all those together. So lunch will, we talked about it. We had a kind of a community meeting to talk about some things for a safe school return questions for a report that has to go into the state. And we talked about it there. And we didn't have really good answers at that moment. I've talked about it with several teachers, staff in the building, just to try to get the right idea in terms of, you know, the building better than I, but the Maverick room can't hold all those students all at the same time. And so at this point, one of the things we've decided that what we think should be appropriate, the lunches will be box lunches. It's not going to be sort of a serve kind of a thing. It will be a box lunch. And the request is that they all be pre-ordered. So they will be sort of laid out and kids just walk by and pick it up and they go find a spot. So there are some teachers, we're not requiring it of teachers. They have a duty-free lunch period and for 30 minutes. So, but some teachers do open their classrooms and are willing to do that. So that may take groups of kids. The word that I get from teachers is that students kind of naturally go down the halls, or they go out on the lawn, or if they go on the steps. There is kind of a domain that they go in. And we want to honor that. It's harder to get a tent for the high school only because it's either concrete or a hill. So we kind of steered away from that. But we also wanted them to feel comfortable. We have a whole bunch of yoga mats and like Indian blankets that we'll put out for kids to be able to grab and take if they'd rather sit on them. They're welcome to bring their own, and we'll find a way to store them. And they're also could bring their own chair if that's what they wanted to do. They had a beach chair or whatever camping chair that they wanted, we could do that too. High school kids tend not to. I know the elementary is ordered some tables and chairs for kids to sit on. That's not a high school kid. They will do it a little bit differently. So that's not our plan to do, but we also want to remain extremely flexible, and that if we get in the middle of that first week and go, whoa, this really isn't working, we're going to get what we need to have to make it work. And we might get that advice from parents and students. And that's the best thing that I think I like about the ability to pivot quickly, which smaller schools can do much better than a larger school district, is to be able to do that. And another piece of that was that our plan is to release students intermittently so that perhaps the seniors, evidently you don't have bells, but wherever the seniors are in class, that end of third period, they'll be released first, maybe 2 minutes later, the juniors, and 3 minutes the sophomores, and then the freshmen. And that should be enough time, because some kids are knocking down small children to get to lunch and others will take their time, but all of them can get to lunch, grab their lunch, and go find a spot. And kids kind of naturally line the halls. We will make the gym available for kids to sit outside. Dave, you sat on one of those meetings. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that? David?
I put some stuff in the chat just about some of the things that we had discussed, like that we'll be able to rent tents. We don't need to purchase them. And that's if we needed, and you said it so well that because we're small, we're able to make quick changes and be flexible. And that's what we're looking to do. We're going to meet student needs, and once the weather turns, yeah, that's a really that's going to be a game changer in some ways for where they want to eat lunch. And we're going to have to figure out how to do that best when that day comes.
Thank you. So there's a few more questions. One of them I'm going to answer. When are student schedules going to be available? That is always the big question. This year it's been even more challenging for me as we've been trying to hire staff, and not having a teacher hired makes it really hard to build a master schedule and get schedules complete. So after today, with the great news about getting the French teacher and the counselor starting next week, I am working diligently on getting schedules done. They will not see them until their first day of school, most likely, because again, it's been quite a packed summer with doing a lot of other things to keep things going here at the school. All right, and let me go to another question. There's one about, will we release vaccination rates each week? And another kind of segue on that is, how will vaccination status change the protocols at the school, or if it will?
Okay, vaccination rates of each class is a new question for me tonight. I'd never even thought about that, if we would release it. I need to think on that a little bit. I don't want to violate anybody. I certainly wouldn't put any names attached to it, but I don't know that I think that isn't a worthwhile statistic. I think it might be, but I have to think on that a little bit. So I will get back. I will somehow have an answer somewhere for you, whether it's in an e-blast or something. Whether or not I think that's appropriate, I don't know. Are other schools doing that? I have no idea.
I have not seen that anywhere, but I was reading about that, and it seems as if it would probably be something that the MESD would be supporting us on as far as gathering all that data, because they're going to be handling when we do have students that are ill. So that's what I would think it would come from.
So I know that our goal is to put it in that statewide database system, and my guess is the state will then have access to see that. So there may be a way that they're gathering it that way. There was other parts to that question. Let me make sure that I get them all.
How will the vaccination status? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I can see it there.
Okay.
Protocols at the school, if it will. The only time it will come into effect is if we have an outbreak, or if we have a student who has the protocol is that if a student is near another student for longer than 15 minutes. So if you have a child who's been exposed to someone who is a known COVID, tested positively for COVID, then we will have to do some contact tracing. And those students who are not vaccinated will probably be sent home to, they'll be sent home to quarantine. Everyone will be sent home to quarantine that has been around that student. But I still don't know if that changes things long term. And believe me, I work on this every day. So that's a really good question. And I will get back at least a specific. If you've been vaccinated, this is what's going to happen. If you haven't been vaccinated, this is what's going to happen. So I promise.
Okay, Carrie Banks is next. Do you want to ask your question, Carrie, or do you want me to read it?
Reading is fine.
Okay. The protocol says that if a child tests positive, that if the school is masked and 3 feet apart, they don't have to be quarantined. Since we're not going to be able to have the 3 feet apart for sure, if I heard correctly, is it as best as possible? What is going to happen when and if a student tests positive?
Well, the student tests positive. We know the student will go home. That student will go home. It's I think that those students that are, say they're gathering in the library or gathering in the halls for lunch or after school, that's going to be really hard to track. And the suggestion will be, if you've been exposed for longer than 15 minutes at a time to that student during the time that they have been spreading those germs, then those kids should stay home for a few days and see if there are symptoms that arise. But if it does say that they don't have to be and they haven't been, I just think it's impossible in my mind to think that kids are going to always be 3 feet apart. And so I would rather be safe than sorry and let kids stay home and get the work that they can from their teachers and be able to be healthy. And we do not want the spread to go throughout the school. That is absolutely the worst thing that we could have happen.
Yes, we have hired the physics teacher that replaces the teacher that had retired last year. That we did earlier in the summer. That's why I didn't mention it earlier. Thank you for that question. And there seems to be quite a few questions along the lines of what we heard in the news today, like Portland Public and Washington State requiring their teachers and school staff to all be vaccinated. What is the plan for Riverdale, and what would that look like?
As of right now, we are not making it a requirement. And that's all I can tell you today. And if we do make it a requirement, that will be sort of a decision that the board and the superintendent may make together and with consultation from us. But I have not heard that that is a change for us.
Another question, if a student is sent home to quarantine, will they be able to participate in school online?
We are not offering the CDL, the distance learning portion that we had last year. That's not on the table, but we can pivot to it closely should we need to, but we are not offering it. But I also know that you have really quality teachers. And I think that from what my perspective is that they all learned how to do online posting assignments, communicating with parents in a different way than perhaps they were 18 months ago. They're much better at, much more skilled. And I don't worry that your student will have access to their classroom and their teacher and the assignments. And teachers may, certainly not a requirement, but they may record lessons. They can do some flipped classroom stuff. But we are not offering for a student to go exclusively online unless we all go.
Okay, Gail Mandel, you're next, and then Shelley Morris after that.
Okay, this is to get away from COVID because my son is going to be a sophomore. So this will be what is going to be the closest thing to a normal high school year for him as of yet.
Yeah.
And Cheryl, I had reached out to you and it's a tech question. I know that Chromebooks, this might be a nice breath of fresh air away from COVID. Chromebooks are available for students to check out from the library, but we're happy to get him a Chromebook of his own. I'm just kind of trying to figure out what is the norm for the high school students because he's just been logging on from a computer from home. So I'm kind of curious what is norm? Thank you.
Can I ask Sarah
Jansen, will you
to
answer that question?
I'd be happy to answer. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the librarian at Riverdale. So I have all the Chromebooks in here, and we will be able to check those out to students while they're at school. It'll look a little different from the past because we'll have to make sure every student consistently checks out the same one if they are using them. But they don't go home. So if you're looking for something for your student to transition from school to home, I can send you some specs that our tech director worked up to say, like, this is what is required to be successful with the different technology that we use. And I'd say if you're just wondering whether students tend to use the Chromebooks or bring their own device, it's about half and half.
Sarah, I'd love that. I mean, honestly, I would like to just we're fortunate enough that we can get him what he needs. So I would love to just know what that is, so we don't need to deal with the daily check-in, check-out. So thank you.
Yeah, I will send those to Elizabeth and have them out in the next blast.
Perfect.
Okay, Shelley Morris.
Sorry, I was on the question and answer with the grade school, so I don't
Oh.
know if this was answered or not. But so if your child is vaccinated and they're exposed to COVID, do they then have to quarantine for the 2 weeks?
No, I don't think I think they just have to do for like 3 to 5 days.
Okay, and which that's still quite a bit of time to miss in-person learning.
It is. It is.
Okay,
Wendy put some
All right.
links about statewide quarantine. Is Wendy, are you still on here?
She is.
Wendy, do you
Hi.
have something
Yeah,
to
I
add
added
to
the
that?
link to the chat so everyone can go and look at it.
If people logged on after you put that, they can't see it. So you might want to just
Oh,
paste
really?
it one more
I'll
time.
add it
Yeah.
again.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
So another question, and maybe David, you could answer this. So the question is: so do my new student just walk in the first day? Are they getting greeted at the door? Do they have a home room? Do they need school supplies? What is that first day when I show up going to look like?
So they will be greeted at the door. They'll be assigned to a small group that's going to be led by some upperclassmen. And so there will be someone at the door when they walk in, helping them get a name tag, helping them get settled in, taking them to a room where they're going to be meeting with a small group of students. They'll do some kind of get to know you activities and some introduction things. We prioritize some of the things that we think students can be nervous about on the first day of school. Where's my locker? What's my schedule? Some of those things earlier in the day than we have in the past. But they will, the whole goal of that day is to welcome them to the school, is to bring them in, to make them feel comfortable as you can be on your first day in a new building for many of them. And have them get to know some students and have them get to know some adults in the building. And they'll be working through some activities. Most of that won't be of an academic nature. They will have an opportunity to meet with all of their teachers. They will go through their schedule in a very abbreviated school schedule, but that will be mostly to hear, what do I need to bring on Monday? What do I need to do to be ready on Monday when classes begin for me? So for the question about materials, teachers will let them know at that point if there's anything specific that they need to be successful in their classroom, so that they can grab that stuff over the weekend and be ready to go on Monday.
We have not typically had class supply lists at the high school level unless there's something really, really specific that a teacher wants students to have, for organization purposes or a specific tool. But generally, if it is like a protractor or something, that's going to be in the classroom already for students to access. I wrote this in an email earlier today, but I would recommend for a high school student to have a binder that they can organize with tabs, a couple spiral or composition notebooks, lined paper, pens, pencils, highlighters. Just be ready for school.
I know that some of the questions were being answered by each other, so I think I've gotten all the questions. If we've missed any of the questions that were typed into the chat, please feel free to send me an email tomorrow, either to myself or Grace Thompson, and we'll sort through those and make sure that we cover them in up and coming e-blasts.
So it's 7, and I did say that I am a fan of ending on time, so I still am. I'm still a fan of it. So thank you all for coming. As Cheryl said, please don't hesitate to email. We will get this information out. We will also try to answer the questions that we didn't have answers to. And I appreciate the staff's time, parents' time. It's all valuable, and thank you so much. And if you want to come meet me, my door's always open. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.